Hey everyone, my name is Cheryl Williams, and I am the founding director of Santa Cruz Black, which is a small grassroots nonprofit. And I am so thrilled to be here at KSQD Studios to be in conversation with Aaron Johnson for our upcoming event. Let me give 1 minute or two about Aaron Johnson, what I know about him. He is the founder of the CUT Project, which stands for Chronically Undertouched, and he's the film director of this incredible film we're going to show. It's a short film called Dark and Tender. And I just have to say that I was so moved. It was such a profoundly deep and rich film that I said, I've got to do something with this film. I also want to give out a shout out and a thanks to Ganin Pinto, because I would not have met Aaron if it wasn't for them. So I am eternally grateful. I think the work that Aaron does is wonderful. And Aaron, can you add more to who you are and the CUT Project?
Yeah, thank you so much, first of all, for having me. It's so good to be here and to be able to discuss this in a live context. The Chronically Undertouched Project is really a life-saving practice for myself. And so the CUT Project, Chronically Undertouched for Black men, it really highlights the rarity, the space that we rarely get to be tender, be vulnerable, to tend to ourselves, with ourselves. And to me, the Chronically Undertouched Project is my life's work. So I just want to name the documentary is 18 minutes long, but it really is some of the most important footage I have shot in my art making and photo making and creative making space. To have footage of thoughtful platonic touch with Black men on camera was a feat, and it also has been so nourishing since released the film. And we've been doing this work throughout the United States over the last 2 years, pretty expansively.
And I'm glad that that's there. I keep thinking about this particular time that we're in with Black bodies, in particular Black men coming up missing and or unalived by way of being strange fruit, i.e. lynched, and other horrific ways that, and I think about that and I'm thinking there's got to be some sort of tie in, and some way that this tenderness and platonic touch can tie this in, because oftentimes we, as a Black community, will we want to socialize our Black men to be protectors, and I'm not opposed to that, to be honest, because men generally are bigger and thicker than women. Generally speaking, I'm not saying that's the rule. But on the other hand, then they lose the ability to be vulnerable and to be nurturing and all those other things, that those traits that are attributed to women and female identified people. Can you bring that together for me?
Yeah, I was thinking about this a lot, and this has been something we've been navigating for multiple years as waves of Black community being attacked and trying to figure out what this uptick is and what is causing it. But what I would say is that the Chronically Undertouched Project, the Dark and Tender ecosystem, and the work that we're doing is about village making. And when I think about protecting community, it is about, village is so much harder to trap, corner, attack when you have a tight village. And one thing I have seen, and it's been in this work and growing this work, how the practice we use of deep listening, reducing our trauma stories that might cause us to have harm or conflict with each other, makes us strong and makes us tracking each other in a way that's harder for whatever predatorial energies tracking our community can defend itself, protect itself, watch out for each other, and not be confused on how critical village is now more than ever. And for me, when I look at the work that we're doing with Dark and Tender, when I look at the work with the Brotherhood, I remember talking to some brothers in Port Townsend that were coming in for the film 2 years ago, and they were nervous because they weren't sure like what this workshop might be about, how might I participate. And I remember one brother said to me, he said, I'm determined to come because I'm committed to a brotherhood, to a village support, And I understand that's what you're also building here. And that to me is something I'm tracking. I look at what's happening to Black bodies. There was a lynching several times near our community in the high desert. And as this starts to people were tracking it, it was really about us saying, where are you going? How are you? Have I checked in with you? Do we have a system of knowing where each other are in the community? And do we trust each other as well? Because I think that's the part that I'm really building with Black communities. I've been building for years, Black community, is that us reclaiming our deep trust and village and co-creating village with each other. That for me is what sits at the center of this work that will help keep us safe and also keep the predatory attacks against us less effective.
I can see that. Proximity of where we are, where we live, like if we are living in a community where it's predominantly Black or predominantly white, the proximity of Black people to each other will make that connection easier, right? Or wrong?
It does, but I think at the same time, because we're kind of a mobile community, right? Folks will move around and move. I feel like one of the gifts of technology is that we can be virtually in village. I reach for brothers that are in Denver, brothers on the East Coast, and we do drop-in sessions on a regular, checking on each other. And I also live on 13.5 acres in the Mojave Desert, and I'm constantly in this kind of flow of how to build village on that land and how to build in proximity. And I'm a huge fan. If you want to get me on the kind of, my deep beliefs on what it means to be living on land and be able to access land and being able to cooperate with each other on land as Black folks, I'm a huge fan of that. And I see a lot of Black folks answering that question, but it's something I'm really invested in. So I think proximity is huge. Virtual is doable. And I think it's also more for us to, any chance we get to get on land, to get access to land so we can be an intimate village and co-create a stable future with each other.
I like that. The whole collective economic, well, that would be part of it in order to obtain that land. I don't want to veer from that. So I'd like to know, how did you become the founder of the Chronically Undertouched project? Was there a specific event in your life, or how did this all birth?
Technically, the major shift that started this in my body was the death of my father in 2010, November 20th. And it was a accident working on his truck. And one of the things that at that moment, that time in my life, I did not have access to my tears. I wasn't crying. I wasn't feeling. And that tragedy, because we're very close to my dad. Me and my dad are very close, love each other deeply. His loss of life, the speed of it, or the intensity of his death, forced me to recognize that I needed to do something to access my tears. And I wasn't even able to cry until another 2 years, maybe 3 years after that, his passing. But that death was the catalyst event that really challenged my nervous system and said, you can no longer be in a non-crying state, a non-feeling state, a numb state. That was not sustainable. And so that was the place that I really started just trying to learn how to cry. And after I worked on that for about a year, which is an ongoing process, I had my first major cry and being held in a community of folks that helped me really well in that, opening up. And about maybe 6 months after that, I started really assessing my body, going, I need to be held platonically. And for me, at the time, I thought I was just helping myself. I was just going to learn how to build now we have language for it in our program. But back then I was like, I just want to find 3 or 4 people I can go to and be held in that platonic way. And my wife Camelia, and several other folks in our community were like, yeah, we can step in and support. And I started to feel like, what kind of touch do I want? What feels good? What feels safe? What feels nourishing? What opens up my tears? What happens when I cry and be held? What happens to like a little micro grief ceremony? These are all things I started to assess for myself. And I thought it would stay there. But that's kind of where it started for myself. And then it didn't leave my own heart and mind until I was in that conversation with a brother I was mentoring at the time. And we had a back and forth conflict. And I remember me asking this question that still sits as like an explosion of momentum of the project kind of forming itself outside of me. And I asked him, I said, when was the last time in the last 12 months you've had 3 minutes of thoughtful platonic touch? And he couldn't think of 3 minutes in the last 12 months of thoughtful platonic touch with anybody, let alone African heritage male.
Wow. Yeah. So the DAP is not considered.
It's 20 seconds max, maybe 10 seconds. It's important, but it's not. It's not 3 minutes of sustained touch.
That's interesting. I recall reading something. I think I read about the Cut Project. The first hug is listening.
Yeah, I love how that's phrased. The phrase can sound like listening is the first hug.
I keep saying it the wrong way.
But I love both ways. But the reason we say listening is the first hug, because one of the common questions, I would say most common questions we get asked when people come to our workshops or gatherings, Aaron, do I have to touch anybody? And I'm like, no, you don't have to do anything. And I said, what's really powerful is listening is the first hug. Are you up for trying out listening? And you're like, I can listen. That's doable. That's a practice. And so for us, we name it that listening's the first hug. And in spirit of your reversal of, hug is a listening. Reversal is important because when we hug for the first time, there's a listening, there's an attunement, there's an awareness. And so the intimacy here, we know when we say listening is the first hug, is really allowing us to drop into the magnitude of what might be going through our bodies, and can we notice it? Can I notice my heart beating faster when I start to think about hugging someone? Can I see myself relax? Can I notice my body's maybe desire for it or not? Can I hear my yes, my no? Can I hear that in my body? So listening to the first hug is like the nest in which we build all of our activities on, because if we can't quite hear each other, then I think we can't quite safely hold each other, because the stop is not heard or the I need this is not heard, and that makes safe touch not as safe. In some cases, not safe at all.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with you. I know there was a time when I was not in touch with my emotion. I absolutely was numb. I couldn't even identify what an emotion was. So I'm sitting in a therapist's office, and she said, well, no, Cheryl, that's not an emotion. You're telling me events or telling me steps. But when I first stepped into her office, the fact that she listened to me, I just bawled. And I didn't know where it came from. But I was good after that. I was good after that. I would like to let everyone know that we are talking with Aaron Johnson, founder of the Cut Project and the director of Dark and Tender Film. And we're doing this because we have an upcoming event tomorrow, Wednesday, at RCNV. It's going to be the film screening, this short documentary, and the workshop, which is curated specifically for Black men. I know with me, when I hug people, I actually am not tuning into what's going on with me. I'm tuning into what's going on with them. What do I feel? Is it going to be... And you know how some people, they barely touch you. Now that I'm an elder, I sometimes will say, well, that's not a hug. Let me show you what a hug is like. You know, those hugs where they just put, there's at least an inch and a half of space between your body and their body.
Mm-hmm. It's real. The hug is kind of our symbol of touch. But I've learned as we've been working with brothers, we do a lot of hand holding, sitting and hand holding. We do a lot of just practicing brushing our elbows with each other. And I think I'm always tender when it comes to what people do on their own accord, like if they are a soft hugger, if they are like resistant. I'm always trying to, what is the story behind their design of how they reach for someone, how long they hold. And we have a 4 to 3 second kind of tradition in our culture here. But what happens when it goes to 7 seconds? What happens when so to really pay attention to our nervous systems. But I think it's important to just attune ourselves to people's capacity and what it might look like to help them know how to really decide, choose what kind of hug they want. Because sometimes we're kind of just like, it's passive. It's like, how you doing? I'm good. Hug real fast. Not going, wow, what does it mean to slow myself down and really engage with each other? And I think as Black community right now in this unique era of time we're living in, it's so important that we continue to attune ourselves with each other to really track what it means for our nervous systems to co-regulate skillfully with each other, and to be in that micro moment of commitment to being close with each other and building that trust. Because I know that just because we're African heritage together does not mean that we automatically get along and can trust each other. And so I think there's a way of really being able to practice that attunement, practice that healing, so that we can really reach for folks candidly, openly, and have this practice that allows village to start forming itself from the first attuned listening experience that might lead to more contact and more work and more action.
Well, I love that, and it's true. The period that we're in now, there is mistrust amongst some of us,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's people who are just totally open.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get the people who are standing by the sidelines and not certain to bring them in.
100%.
Because a lot of us want to come in, but they just don't trust.
Yeah. We've been hurt. I've talked to many brothers that have been hurt by their fathers, been hurt by their neighbors, been hurt by folks that they loved at one point, and they're still finding their way back into trust with their own people. And I've been hurt by Black folks myself, so I know how committed I need to be in reaching for healing those hurts and not giving up on the village that we need to create the future we're trying to build.
That's the important part, not giving up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I could ever give up. Yeah. But, so, Aaron, where did you grow? What type of community did you grow up in? And
I am a preacher's kid. My dad was a preacher. My mom was a preacher. We had a Church of God, Evening Light Saints. We sang a cappella music. 5 children sit on the front row. My mom was very strict on us not talking or fitting with each other and participating. And so I think for me, my mother and father preached. My father preached. My father was actually not the senior pastor. My mom was the senior pastor when it comes to actually preaching longer, had a bigger lineage of more training, and she taught my father how to preach. And so I grew up with a very powerful mother and a very clear father, and very conservative church as far as like not politically but otherwise, and there was this beautiful. We were small because we're a cappella church. We were not like a commercial church in the 90s and the 80s, but there was a place where I learned how to speak. I learned how to teach. I learned a lot of facilitation. I learned how to sing. I learned how to support people, give up my time and resources to support community. All that was shaped right there in church. I grew up in the Mojave Desert in a little town called Phelan. Has like 2-3 stoplights. We're about an hour and a half east of Los Angeles. We're 3 hours west of Vegas, and about 2.5 hours from San Diego. We're kind of tucked right against the Sierra Mountains in Southern California.
Wow. Okay, that's a unique upbringing.
Yeah.
I like that. So let's go into a musical interlude if we can.
Mm-hmm.
I know music is a big part of, or it's a important, integral part of your practice. Am I correct?
Yes, very important. Yeah.
So can you talk about that? Just before Aaron says something, I just want to say that I was, earlier I was saying, I just could not wrap my mind around singing because I don't like how I sound. Mm-hmm. It is not pleasant sounding to me. So it took me a while to grasp what singing does to the heart.
Yeah. Because
it doesn't do that for my heart, not when it's coming out of my mouth.
Right. There's a whole lot in that story, and I would love to sing a little song from my sister, Alilia, who wrote many songs. This is a song we use actually oftentimes with brothers when we gather. It's called I Reach Down Deep. It's a short little song. I reach down, down, down deep. I reach down, down, down deep. Mother Earth welcomes me. Mother Earth welcomes me. I reach down, down, down deep. I reach down, down, down deep. Mother Earth welcomes me. Mother Earth welcomes me.
I like that. I had to hold my hands, sit on them. I kind of felt like I either wanted to clap or snap.
Yeah.
I can feel the rhythm. And there's a part of me who wants to sing, but I don't want to mess up how it sounds.
You know, if we weren't on like live radio, we would totally sing together in the sense of like every voice is worth hearing. And I hear your speaking voice and I'm like, I can't wait to hear you sing. Such an important voice. And I say it because the human voice, when I think about village singing, go back to that village idea. When I hear village singing, not choir, but village, you hear elder voices, you hear children mumbling, you hear eloquent young people, you hear all the voices. Village choir is hearing the people, the whispers, the angel voices, the children voices, all the things. And so I think of singing a lot like crying. You know, it's a big part of our bodies. No one ever tells you you're not crying right. That's not how we cry here. You got to change your pitch because it's a weep. It's a part of our breathing. So I look at music that way when I can. I know I sing in song circles and choirs in my family, but when I think about singing at its best, it is as beautiful as tears.
Well, that was beautiful, and what a gift. And again, I'm so in awe and glad that we met.
Oh, what a gift this is. Thank you so much for inviting me in to Santa Cruz and the Black community here and the allies around the Black community here in Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz has become a sweet spot in my heart.
I'm glad. I'm hoping that we can bring you back. And I'm Cheryl Williams. We're in conversation with Aaron Johnson of the Cut Project and the director of Dark and Tender. This film screening will be tomorrow, the 15th of July, at Resource for Nonviolence at 612 Ocean Street. We're going to open the doors at 5:15ish, and I hope to see you all there. That's the public film screening and the Q&A, and then we're going to shift into a workshop for Black men.
Yeah.
And how long have you been doing these workshops? I think you said 2 years, but...
Yeah, so we got funding 2 years ago, but I was doing the work 5-6 years before that locally with the 4 or 5 brothers that I was working with in Phelan, California. So we went public after we got our first round of funding 2 years ago after the film was funded and we could start to work beyond the borders of Phelan. So the total work from my own personal journey was 11 years to present, but as far as funded and in public, that would be 2 years.
Well, that's a lot of time.
It's been a beautiful journey thus far.
It sounds like it, the practice. I want to be a fly on the wall. I really do. I also read that sometimes you do mixed groups.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, might have to think about that.
Well, you know, when I think about mixed groups, we mix all kinds of different ways, even amongst brothers. But when I think of the mixed group of white men and Black men specifically, that is a particular strategy in that I work with, say, a group of white men for, let's say, 6 weeks to 6 months, depending on what their capacity is. And I work with Black men separately. And then we slowly merge to a place where we're like, now let's come together with intention. So I do this kind of parallel universe work, and then we come together, and that typically helps us really drop into any of the stuff that comes up for us. I think there's a particular important healing in the United States with white men and Black men that oftentimes it rarely shows up tenderly. We all show up kind of with our shields up, and this work allows you to protect yourself. That's totally appropriate at all times, but it also invites us to drop into a tender part of ourselves. What does it mean for us to be tender and clear as we process this? And so that's the kind of usually how I do mixed spaces. I try and work with both groups to get ahead of any major trauma stories that might get in the way of us getting close and getting into the work of healing our ancestral trauma stories in the United States.
So it's fair to say that some of the work you're doing is trauma-informed?
Yeah, so we do trauma-informed, and we added something that came up when we started doing our lynching research in Montgomery is we have carnage-informed. And that doesn't erase the trauma-informed. But when I look at what has happened to Black bodies in America, being trauma-informed is step one, and then next to that step is being carnage-informed. Because when I see what happens to Black folks in our modern prison industry, when I look what happens to us in our medical apartheid and medical violation, when I look what happens to us in some of the economic, strategic ways we've been dismantled, this is carnage. It is carnage. And we can be informed to thrive in that, to sing in that, to build magic and beauty in even in all of that. And so for me, I think trauma-informed is so important. We want to track, give people preference, let people know what's happening beforehand, give people always a place to leave, check in on people's nervous system. But being carnage-informed allow us to look at also the systemic danger that we try and acknowledge the price. And that's why my attitude is I will show up and support 3, 5, 2 brothers in a room. And Aaron, why'd you fly to New Orleans across the country? And it's only 4 people in the room. I said, that's called carnage informed. It is worth my attention to have one brother in the room. One brother. That's how important it is. So for me, when I look at this work, being carnage informed is how we reach for each other, not be confused about how magical we are when we show up for this work and what it might take for 2, 5, 6 brothers to show up in a room.
Right. No, I can, yeah, I can hear that. The film was so moving. It really was. I'm thinking about how would you describe how you open it up to male identified people?
Yeah, as far as the film or the workshop itself?
Both.
Yeah.
And I say that because I got a question from someone and it had to do with cis-het identified men. I said, well, as far as I know, it's open up to any male identified person.
100%. We have queer folks in the film, trans folks in the film, and one of the things we try to track our best is really understand that when we talk about touch, we have to work on our homophobia and our transphobia and any of our real stuff around not being able to, because even myself, I want to track, I'm still coughing up layers of learning how to be a deeper ally and clear to the queer community, clear about my positionality. That being said, I think one of the things that I find to start opening up is that we have learned so much from the queer community about touch. We have learned, they've been such an ally in us learning how to show up in a masculine body and also be tender. And I also can recognize that if you are in your early stages of working on your homophobia, I would just check your heart and go, do I have capacity to show up to a tender place and really respect the queer community that is invited and is present? As a facilitator, I'm huge advocate to making a space safe for everybody. At the same time, I'm aware that we're learning how to hold each other for the first time, and some of us haven't held each other in 20 years, 10 years. And so I'm recognizing that dance. But all Black, masculine, male-identified, queer, trans bodies are welcome in this space, not just here, but definitely in the Dark and Tender ecosystem in the Cut Project.
And that's beautiful. And I think that is the world that we all want to live in, the world that we're trying to create.
Yes.
For sure. I think it's time for another song, Aaron.
Yeah. This is an Lilia Johnson song, no surprise. I've seen a lot of her songs. It's also very short, but also I think it's profound in its message. Lay your head on my pillow. Lay your heart on my soul. Lay your head on my pillow. Lay your heart on my soul. Lay your head on my pillow. Lay your heart on my soul. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, boom, boom.
When I'm hearing that song, the words, it's reminding me of how we could be intimate with each other in a platonic way. Lay your head on my pillow. Yeah. And I think that there's got to be an opening in the soul to be able to feel that comfortable to do so and to say that.
Yes. I asked Aaliyah, because that lyric, lay your heart on my soul, it just pricked my heart in a beautiful way. And I said, Aaliyah, like, what were you trying to say in that phrase? And she goes, Aaron, I was trying to write a lyric that described an action or an experience that when one person, another human, reaches for another human so skillfully, so clearly, so leading with love, that oppression can't fit in between us. It doesn't get in the way. We're not confused about each other. That action in her heart, in her lyric writing, was lay your heart on my soul. And I thought, that's the action I would like to do in my work. So when we sing, that's our hope, is we're channeling that behavior. What does it mean for me not to be confused? This brother is a multi-millionaire, and this brother over here is, navigating poverty and is figuring out his shelter. And they both can say, I can just let go all these trappings of culture, of society, and go, you are a human being worthy for me to listen to you, to see you, to hold you, and to track you. And that's lay your heart on my soul.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful feeling. It's warm and inviting.
Yes.
And it does involve trust.
It does. Foundational in this work.
I'm Cheryl Williams. We're in conversation with Aaron Johnson, who's the founder of the CUT Project and who will be the facilitator of the workshop that we're about to talk about that's happening tomorrow. There will be a film screening. The workshop and film screening is called Dark and Tender. Aaron, I'm wondering if you can give us some explicit details about how the workshop is going to go without, revealing too much, because we want people to come. We don't want them to
I've already gotten
say,
I got my workshop on the radio. I need to come.
Yeah.
I think it's important to know what we're up to, because I think it should make a decision on if you would like to be a part. Our workshops have several phases, but one of the things that continuously shows up in our workshop is we try our best to start with grounding and noticing what it looks like to attune ourselves with each other and what listening is available. And one of the ways I do that is we do some simple singing exercises, sounding exercises that allow our voices to come into the room, a little beatboxing. So can I tend to hear you? Can I hear who's in the room? Can I track the attunement in the room? And then I usually lead with several questions. I try and get a clear story of what are people bringing into the space? Are we just got off of work? Have we been recently sick? Have we, what did we take to get to that room? How did we get there? What was our way there? And then we'll go into a little bit of a debrief reflection on the film. The film is really our first, second, and third prompt in this context of the workshop. But what we want to do is be able to use the diversity, the story of the film as one of the foundations of the film. Then we will do a demo. So I'll do some demos of ways that we can listen to each other. And so we'll do that demo so we're all clear about how that works. And then we'll start to practice it with each other. So we'll split up in the groups or in the pairs, and we'll do a demo on that prompt. And I think one of the things that's going to be in our prompt, amongst other things, is going to be tracking grief. because you talked earlier about the black bodies that are being lynched, that are being lost, and the toll is that I was talking to a brother a couple of years ago that just lost his daughter. She was like 21 years old. And he said, Aaron, I want to go to a grief ceremony, but I can't find a single space I can go to where actually black men are present. And not that this is all about a grief ceremony, but a place where we can show up in our tender self, in our grief space, in our I just won space, in our win space, that all those hearts are available. And part of my job as a facilitator is to say, who is here? Is grief here? Is wins? Is big wins in the room? Who's in the room? Not just by name, but by heart. That's one of the biggest tasks. And once we find out who's in the room, we'll say, well, how can we hold each other now that we're here? And one of the big practices of a touch plan is tracking our voice and tracking what it means to reclaim it if we've been told or it's been shut down. So what does it mean to reclaim that voice? And then after we get past the voice piece, then we'll go into what it means to actually build a touch plan that we can take home with us. And that's more of a writing space. So we'll do some jotting down, some writing about what is to build a touch plan. Hopefully folks will leave with a touch plan and some listening practices and some great little simple songs to sing.
Oh, that sounds great. Do you ever find when people come that they're not being totally truthful or honest? Like they're just not so much truth, they're just shielding part of who they are. They're not willing to open up.
Often. That's most of the time. People come with a little bit of protection because my workshops, Dark and Tender, Platonic Touch, there's not like a ton of these out there, right? So it's not like, cuddling is a common thing in a region. So Santa Cruz has all kind of cuddle gatherings. But we're talking about black men. These aren't necessarily places that black men have been invited intentionally. And so this is always new for us. And this is even more than just cuddle gathering. This is about heart reaching. This is about village building. So touch is like a umbrella for tender village that has nonviolent contact with each other. And so for me, because I grew up playing 4 years of football, I grew up wrestling with brothers. There's nothing wrong with being strong, lifting weights, being tough, but we're more used to knocking each other out, wrestling each other down than we are about how do I get a tender touch here with this body, with this person in a platonic container. And so because it's such a reclaiming of such a unique experience, most people come with somewhat of a protection up, unsure. How do I find my no quickly? How do I find my yes? Do I want to find my yes? So that's common how we show up, and I not only expect it, but welcome us to come. And I think it makes sense for us to come a little protected.
I see, yeah. So I don't know about this. You said Santa Cruz is kind of like a cuddle what?
Well, there's cuddle gatherings.
Yeah, I've never heard of that.
Well, yeah, there's...
outside of... I'm on the outside.
No, you aren't. I would say that when I come for festivals and gatherings that have very low numbers of African heritage folks, you can find many cuddle gatherings that are celebrating touch. You rarely see black men and black bodies being held well in those spaces or even acknowledged in those spaces. Black folks are holding each other throughout the country, but oftentimes even when I see it done in Los Angeles or other places, it's still predominantly black women actually holding each other, which is beautiful and amazing. But black men are very unsure how we can show up, particularly those that haven't had a safe place to do that. So in Santa Cruz, I'm sure there's some pockets because there's a lot of magic of black folks everywhere. But when I've been in Santa Cruz and the big gatherings that have been here in the hills, mind you, they're predominantly white hosted on the white land and white gatherings. They have been plenty of like workshops and cuddle gatherings, but there was no language or awareness of what it might mean to safely bring in a black male into the space with the complexity of our history in the United States. And so I'm usually one of the few or only brother in the room going, I'm down to be here, but how can we think about what it means to bring my body into this space where in the context of America, it can be very unsafe for me to really unravel quickly without tracking the room with their capacities. And we've had some beautiful conversations because of it. But that's what I mean by it. There's lots of cuddle gatherings in this kind of region, but not for black men and for black people.
Right. Okay. Understand this now. So I'm sitting here thinking about there's a part in the actual film where a brother's head is being touched, like hands are being laid on his head.
Yeah.
And so, and I keep images in and that was a strong image.
Yeah.
And he's all wrapped up like in a burrito or something.
Yeah.
And the men were being very careful and tender in wrapping up each other. And what was that particular exercise about? I'd have to watch the film, which I will. But
that scene, I think, is maybe 3 minutes total of the actual film. But in the actual workshop, it was like 6 to 4 hours of workshop time in reality. And I get chills just talking, you bringing that up, because it was a scene, or as a part of the workshop, that was called a tuck-in. We did a tuck-in. And we noticed that it was, and this is the case in most environments, people love cuddle puddles. And I'm not a big fan of cuddle puddles. I think done well, they're sweet and can be useful. But when you're in a chronic untouched state, it can be a whole lot of things happening that you may or may not have consent for. And so in a carnage-informed way, we developed this practice called a tuck-in, which is not unique in the sense that we tuck in our children all the time, but I bring it to the adult space because it was a safe way for slow, thoughtful touch to be modeled for each other as the brothers in this workshop are learning how to hold each other. And so this tuck-in workshop, or tuck-in portion of the workshop in the film, we will have time to do it tomorrow, but in the context of the tuck-in, it was the idea of what does it mean to move gently, to check in with the brother and say, how would you like me to tend to you? You want a pillow under your head? Do you want me to hold, cradle your head? Oh, you don't want that? Do you want me to sit you up straight? And every brother could talk about what they needed. And so it's a great exercise, A, to be gentle, but B, to be able to communicate and to be communicated with on how this brother wants to be held, and how you can say, I can't do that, but I can do this. That negotiation of touch is such a simple but yet very foundational piece of having a safe, thoughtful experience. And I get chills because every time I teach that portion in a extended weekend workshop or extended week-long workshops, that tuck-in experience is probably the most transformative, interruptive exercise that we do in the work once we get there as a group. So appreciate you speaking to that, and what it means to achieve that with each other is a big deal.
Incredible that it stuck in my mind. It really was. It was the tenderness and, as you said, thoughtful ways in which brothers were handling each other, and I just couldn't. So I have to speak on it. Yes, I think your film was very, very. I'm trying to find a word for it. It just drew me in. So I am once again thrilled, and I want to plug the event tomorrow, which starts at 5:15. So if you have availability, you want to see this incredible film, Dark and Tender, and then there will be a Q&A, which Aaron will be there to assist with answering any questions. Also, the workshop will be for Black men. So if you're coming and you're not a Black male and you have a Black man friend, bring them. Maybe they'll join the workshop. We have space. We have space for you. So come on. That is pretty much all that I can say. Aaron, do you want to say anything else about what made you do the film? What compelled you?
I had a TEDx talk a year before I shot the film, and I remember going to the brothers I've been working with at the time, and I said, can I get a picture or a photograph of us like holding each other? And they're like, no, I'm good. Don't put me in your talk. Don't put me in your, I love you, Aaron, and do your talk, but don't take a picture of me and put me on cuddling up on the screen. And I respected that now. I as much as I needed that image. And I remember getting done with my TEDx talk, and a really cool cat came over to me. I think he was like a professor at the college at UC Irvine. He goes, Aaron, that was a great talk, but you didn't show any videos of Black men holding each other. And I was like, you're so right, because I couldn't get one. I couldn't get any consent for any footage of any documentation. And then I remember, I went online and I couldn't get any like real humans, like not like stock imagery. That was even hard to find, of brothers platonically holding each other, especially if they weren't like father and son, which is fully fine. But like I'm actually trying to represent like brother to brother, friend to friend. And when after I done that text talk and I was trying to raise the flag on what this work was, I said, do I need to write a book or should I make a movie? And I opted for the movie because I realized how difficult it was to say, here's evidence. This is what it looks like for brothers to be in platonic contact, thoughtful contact. And so even though it was 18 minutes and 35 seconds, and I can't know what other people feel when they watch it. But now after touring the country, and now we have 2 terabytes of thoughtful platonic touch footage from the 2 films that we've done and the workshops we've documented at this stage, I don't take it for granted that I can click a button and for 18 minutes and for 25 minutes of the second film that we can sit and watch platonic touch with Black men that have been given consent to be on camera to say this is who I am as well as everything else that I want to be in the world. And so for me, the film was, I wanted to have a visual aid, a evidence of the practice, proof it's possible. And prior to Dark and Tender, now right now, if you go online, this is like an easy exercise to do. If you type in platonic touch, Black men, just Google, use AI, all the technology. And you know what pops up? Dark and Tender.
That is interesting. You know, I remember when I first got to Santa Cruz in last century, 1979, there was some big festival at the London Nelson Center, and it was celebrating some sort of African something. I remember looking, scanning the crowd because I was in search for Black people, and there were 2 or 3, there was groups of Africans, and I saw these Black men run up and hug each other. And I saw another, so I went over. I'm like, you never see that. I mean, I've seen that with when I was in Boston, Jamaican men, but I didn't. I'm like, and I befriended quite a few African brothers. But so do you think this is a American phenomenon?
Yeah, so this is really important. You have a good point. So this is all the countries in Africa have a variety of homophobia and contact and less contact, but there's several folks I've talked to from Africa, in the continent of Africa, and I'm not sure, I know Ghana was one of their spots.
They were from West Africa.
Africa.
They were Ghanaians and
Okay.
Nigerians that I was meeting at that moment.
And so it's mixed, but traditionally a lot of the there's many cultures on the continent of Africa and West Africa that men will walk holding hands. They'll walk down the street holding hands. They will hold each other. I was talking to a brother in the Bay Area. He was like, yeah, I was playing soccer international. I went over I was on the continent of Africa. I can't remember what country he was in, and he goes, yeah, the guy's asked me to come to the pool hall, and he's grabs my hand and starts walking me to the pool hall, and I was like frozen at first. He said this was like 20, 30 years ago. And he just walked, he said he went into the pool hall and brothers were on each other's lap. They were leaning on each other. They were just so in contact. And so this is not just Americans are definitely in the middle of this problem. But I found that a lot of the nations that would be considered like superpower countries, we struggle with this part of ourselves. So America is top of the heap as far as its nuclear power and its capital and its economics. And because America's top of the heap right now, it's not surprised that our success in capitalism happens to be parallel to our failure in being able to have access to our tender parts of ourselves. So this is definitely an American phenomenon. I can imagine folks in other countries like, that's not a problem for us. What is the whole film about Dr. Tender? This is who we are. So I think this is definitely an American trauma story, and I think it reminds me that when we were taken from our countries and bring here and forced into slavery, that it wasn't our freedom that was taken, our language that was taken, but our touch was taken. A lot of the touch material that we are reclaiming, we already had access to in Village, but now we're reclaiming it now because we've had to kind of survive and navigate this culture here in America that touch has been weaponized. The Black bruteness has been put in front of us. The Black brute is still the most invested image of Black males today. Mm-hmm. And so when you look at Dark and Tender and this is a big interruption of the Black brute narrative, which is where the money is invested. That's normal to see a brother knock someone out, see a brother run somebody over football pads. But we rarely see a brother sit down, hold another brother's hands and go, I want to look into your eyes and hear your story. That matters right now. That really just collapses the Black brute story that's we're fed every day.
I think that's a good point to stop.
Yeah.
Because, yes, that is exactly what I see this work is doing, is dismantling that Black brute stereotype.
Yeah.
And thank you for that.
Thank you.